gentlemen, welcome back to Overcaffeinated and Dysfunctional. We're your hosts. I'm David.
I'm Josh.
Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify, YouTube, X, and TikTok. Click the link tree in the description for all the links to our social media. Be sure to like and subscribe for all new episodes. Welcome back for episode 3. Josh, what are we talking about today?
Good morning, good afternoon. We are talking about everything government shutdown, as well as the morality and efficacy of the death penalty.
Ooh. But first, we're going to go and do our new segment called In the Hot Seat. During this segment, we'll answer one of our viewers' questions. Each host will have 60 seconds to answer the question. Today's question from viewer named Cassandra on Spotify. I am a high school student trying to figure out where I fall in politics. Where should I start to find which side I fall into? Josh, your 1 minute starts now.
I like it. I'd like the question. To begin with, I would say start looking at the base principles each side starts with. You know, if you are a Christian, you're more likely to lean Republican. But that's not always the case. I've seen Christian Democrats, and that's nothing against either side. I think it just matters that you look at the base principles and see which side you identify with more. What side has more of the core values that you want to inherit in your life? And that'll tell you which side to go with. Also, look at current politicians and see what they're saying out there as far as their rhetoric. If it aligns with what you believe, then go with that side. So I think that's a twofold question. Look at the paper principles and look at the political principles.
And Josh, that is time.
Got it good. I told you I was long-winded in the first one.
Right on 60 seconds. I like it.
So, David, it's your turn now. So you are now in the hot seat.
All right. Now, what I recommend is to get a blank piece of paper. Draw a line right down the middle of it. Put a line across the top. On the left, you want to write left. On the right, you want to write right. Go online. Look up what is the most controversial political topics at the time. There's immigration, which bills are going out, and what you want to do is you want to write which topics you align with most. Do you like the Democrat view on immigration? Do you like the Republican view on immigration? Do you like the Republican view on, I don't know, almost anything? So list what you like in each column, and whatever one you have more topics in, there you go. You found your side.
Way to go. You keep beating the clock. You had 10 seconds to spare.
I'm racing the clock. I was watching it. I almost went over, but I cut it short there.
Yeah? No, you were close. I wouldn't have let you go over. I would have just muted your mic.
What a nice way to say shut your mouth. All right, so to get into this conversation about government shutdown, let's look at what a government shutdown is. A government shutdown occurs when the legislative branch does not pass key bills, which funds or authorizes the operation of the executive branch, resulting in a government shutdown. In a shutdown, the federal government curtails agency activities and services, ceases non-essential operations, furloughs non-essential workers, and retains only essential employees in departments that protect human life or property. Shutdowns can also interrupt and disrupt state, territorial, and local levels of government.
Yes, just a quick view at it. Looking into it, did you know that the federal government shutdown roughly costs $300 million to $1 billion per day? For example, the 2017 shutdown that lasted 35 days from December of 2018 to January of 2019 cost the U.S. $11 billion. 3 of that was which of furloughed employees costing GDP. So what my first question would be to you, David, would be, what would be your thoughts of passing legislation stating that during shutdowns, all political figures stop getting paid? And if at a certain point, they don't get repaid, so back paid, you know, if the government shutdown costs over $5 billion, then no federal politician gets back paid.
Well, Josh, that is a really good question. And I think to answer that question, we need to look at who this affects first, before we get into that. Who this affects? Well, military bases, arsenals, depots, federal armories, Veterans Affairs medical facilities, federal prisons and courthouses, national laboratories, national parks, national forests, every other federally owned managed lands, ports, including seaports, airports, intermodal terminals that may host federal customs processing facilities or law enforcement IRS facilities, law enforcement agencies, as in the FBI, ATF, DEA, CBP, and general federal office buildings. Now, the problem with this is they're still working. Yes, it affects them, but they're still working. Guess what they're not getting? They're not getting pay. So what should we do? Under the law currently in effect, even though the government is shut down, the president and senators and representatives in DC under federal law are still they're considered essential and they still get paid. Do you think that's right? Our soldiers overseas serving full time, they're still protecting us, putting their life on the line for nothing. So I think during a government shutdown, any political figure that is involved, period, senator, representative, president, vice president, every member of the cabinet should not get paid. They should not get paid. Why should they not get paid? This is going to force them into coming to a decision and not filling these articles of funding with partisan legislation. Legislation that's costing the the local taxpayers billions, billions, and billions of dollars.
Yes,
What
I
a-
mean, if we just look at it right now, the government's been shut down, what, 5 days as of recording this? 4 days. Even on the low side, you're looking at 1.2 billion, on the high side, $4 billion. And actually, the reason I asked this is because Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina introduced a constitutional amendment that would strip Congress of its pay during federal funding lapses. And I happen to agree with this bill.
100%.
If we can't pay our soldiers, then why should they get paid?
Yes, no, 100%. And these people, yeah, they're writing legislation, they're writing the laws, quote unquote, presenting us in Congress and in the Senate, which I don't believe they actually are. But they're supposed to be representing us. They're not putting their life on the line every day. They're not taking on bullets. They're not taking on fire. They have no chance of being blown up by a mine in a field. Why are our soldiers not being paid? Why are they not being paid? From what I understand, I don't remember where this was, but I heard it on the news. Outside a military food bank at 5 a.m. on day 2, the line was around the building of federal soldiers, wives, and army people, army soldiers lining the street trying to get food because they knew this was going to affect them.
Yeah, and actually, there's an article out there that goes into this. Each department prepares for it now. There's actually a preparation for this as like a fire drill or, your hurricane drill, depending on where your location is for schools. They actually prepare for this in that same respect. It's crazy to me that
That
they have
is
to prepare for this like that because it's
that
such a
is
reoccurring thing for political BS.
that is insane. Well, I will let you know, Josh. This wasn't like this forever. Before the 1980s, funding gaps did not usually result in a government shutdown. Agencies would continue to operate with an expectation that funding would resume in the future. Now, the current budget process was established in 1976. Since then, the government has had 20 funding gaps, resulting in 10 federal government shutdowns for various lengths of time. Now, Josh, do you believe or do you think that any government shutdown is a good thing?
No. Why is our government shutting down? That's what we need to look at. And for most cases, especially this time, it's heavily politicized.
Absolutely.
Democrats are saying one thing, the Republicans are saying another thing. Stop the partisan BS and work together. I mean, we sound like a broken record on here because we keep saying it all the time, but especially it looks like now the Democrats are the obstructionists in this one. They're holding the government up. And to back your point, so under what you had said, the 1980s, we began this law of Anti-Deficiency Act, which I'll go through that real quick. The Anti-Deficiency Act overview. This act prohibits federal agencies from obligating or expending federal funds in advance or in excess of an appropriation and from accepting voluntary services. Anti-Deficiency Act prohibits federal employees from making or authorizing an expenditure form or creating or authorizing an obligation under any appropriation or fund in excess of the amount available in the appropriation or fund unless authorized by law. You can look at this one at 31 U.S. Code subsection 1341, involving the government in any obligation to pay more before funds have been appropriated for that purpose unless otherwise allowed by law. So that's part of why now we have government shutdowns is by law they're prohibited from doing anything else.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And when I spent some time over the last few days going through this, what they're calling dirty CR sent from the Democrats. And when you look at what the Republicans sent to the Democrats, it was an extension on the current funding. There was no partisan BS loaded into that bill at all. There was nothing. And when you look at the dirty CR sent over by the Democrats, let's look at some stuff that they put in there. And they hid it in there. It was on page 57 of the CR bill. It wasn't like it was on page 1, hey, this is what we want. Don't bother going through the rest of it, but this is what we want. It was hidden on page 57 of the CR bill. So, let's see here. Section 71109. They wanted to repeal ending Medicaid funding for most non-citizens. They wanted 7110 ending enhanced FMAP for emergency care to illegal immigrants. The first one is going to cost us over $6 million. Second one, over $28 million. Closing the California loophole so illegal immigrants couldn't get health care. $34 million. Ending Medicare funding for most non-citizens, over $5 million. Ending Obamacare funding for the most non-citizens, $91 million. Repealing the Obamacare special rule for immigrants, $27 million. Overall, the Democrat continuing resolution spends nearly $200 billion more on healthcare subsidies for illegal immigrants and other non-citizens.
Wasn't there a grand total in there for like 1.5 trillion?
I think total, the whole CR was over 1 point whatever trillion. I think that's what it was. It was the whole CR bill total with all federal spending. But just the repealing of the big beautiful bill that Trump passed recently, they wanted to repeal the section for healthcare for illegal immigrants. Now, what is your thoughts on the taxpayers of America paying for insurance for people that are not in the country legally?
No, and we've talked about this. So now there's a bill that Ronald Reagan passed that allowed for emergency room funding, which I agree with, because while the illegal immigrants are here, they're most likely going to end up in an emergency room. I don't think our hospitals should foot necessarily the full bill for that, because it's just going to get passed down to us anyways. So, but the overall arching, we should not be giving them healthcare programs, opening up the market for them to be in when they don't pay for it. Why are we footing the bill? You don't pay for my healthcare. I don't pay for your health care. Why are we going to pay for somebody else's?
No, and I agree with you there. If you're not paying into the system, you shouldn't be reaping the benefits, you know? And another thing, too, is like, and I want people to understand, like, if you're here in the country on a green card and you're paying into the system, well, you have legal status. So if you're collecting Medicaid, you have legal status. So this wouldn't affect you because the CR says illegal immigrants. If you're here on a green card, you are here legally, which
Yeah.
you would
Green
be
card, visa, any of those.
And then the Democrats are spewing rhetoric in the news saying Donald Trump is taking health care away from millions of Americans. Well, let's look at what he actually did. Under the big, beautiful bill, he put work requirements to be able to obtain Medicaid. Who does the Medicaid work requirement law apply to? And who is exempt? Well, if you look at it, the requirement applies to all able bodies. Able bodied meaning anyone who is able to work. Medicaid recipients ages 19 to 64, but there are numerous reasons someone would be exempt, including they have a child aged 13 or younger, or a child who is disabled. They are a caregiver for a disabled relative, or they have a disability or health condition that prevents them from fulfilling the requirements. What are your thoughts there, Josh? And I want to add too. I think we talked about this in one of our latest episodes. We're even going back, screw Medicaid. Throw it out the window for a second. Let's look at welfare. We have people in this country who are collecting welfare. Listen, I understand. The insurance programs in this country are not cheap. I'm on a private insurance company through my work, and it's not cheap. We are lucky our company pays most of it. But, I mean, there's people out there. My father-in-law says he spends over $600 a month on healthcare for him and his wife and his son.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got a coworker that spends $1,300 a month on his family plan.
That is insane. That is insane. And then here we are. We have people that just walk across the border, submit an application, and they're getting free health insurance. How does that make you feel?
It's stupid.
And now going back to the work requirements, I want to add here, if you are an able-bodied person, and there's many people who are able-bodied who are collecting government benefits, if you are on welfare collecting SNAP benefits, food stamps, and you are able to work, you should be working. Why are people ages 19 to 64? You know what? 19 to 55. Why are you sitting home collecting food stamps when you're able to work? Now, if you have a disability that prevents you from doing so, maybe a chronic back problem, or maybe a physical disability, okay, we understand that. But if you're 19, 20 years old, and you just don't know what you want to do with your life, the taxpayers of America should not be footing the bill. Believe it or not, the working class although they work and collect money and pay their taxes, they're still struggling. They're struggling more than people on these SNAP benefits.
Yeah. No, it's so this makes me pose this question to you then. What happens when the government ceases to function, which is what we're kind of looking at? And what does that reveal about power, responsibility, and faith?
Well, this goes to show that one side or another doesn't care about the American people. If the Democrats cared about the American people, they wouldn't be using this as leverage. And I say leverage, why? Because actually, a Democrat lawmaker went on the news and had an anonymous interview with Politico, and they said pretty much they were using this as leverage. The Republicans hold the House and the Senate, so they can't get any bills they want passed. Theoretically, right? Unless they get Republicans on their side. Now, let's see here. Politico. Oh, sorry. The correction. The Democrat senator had an interview with The Hill. The Hill. Quote, a second Democrat senator said a brief shutdown would give Democrats a win, even if it doesn't result in any concrete policy concessions for Republicans. The Democrats said doing so would send a message to the Trump White House that the White House can't continue to steamroll Congress. Without some accommodation, some compromise, I think there will probably be a shutdown for a period of time, the lawmaker said. Now, under Politico said, quote, on one side is the minority party using what literal leverage it has, a looming government funding deadline, to push for priorities it can't enact otherwise. On the other is a majority insisting a short-term funding punt is no place for negotiation. What do you think, Josh, of the Democrats using the funding deadline as leverage to kind of get what they want through? What do you think about shutting the government down, not paying our federal workers, not paying our soldiers for political leverage? What do you think there?
Well, so that's a two-parter for me. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to name drop two senators. The first senator I'm going to name drop, I've begun to applaud him a lot lately for his more centrist stand and his stand on principle, and I'm about to quote him. Democrat Senator John Fetterman says, it's a sad day for our nation. Our government shuts down at midnight. I voted yay to extend the ACA credits because I support them, but I won't vote for the chaos of shuttering our government. My vote was our country over my party. Together, we must find a better way forward. And I like this because the Republicans offered a CR, which for people that don't know is just a continuing resolution, just funds the government to a specified date inside that resolution. They had offered it to extend the government to November for them to start working together and find a better solution. But the Democrats denied it. So what are we doing here? If the Democrats are really for the people, like they say, and Hakeem Jeffries came out the other day and said, oh, we're the party for everybody. The Republicans don't even care about their own constituencies. Okay, then why didn't you accept the CR, extend the government, and work with them to make these necessary adjustments that you believe are needed for the country? The other senator I'm going to name drop is Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer. And you can actually go look at this. Chuck Schumer said in 4 different cases, one was like 2011, 2013, 2018, and 2025, he came out and said there is no reason that we should be shuttering the government for political differences. But yet he was one of the votes that shuttered the government. What kind of hypocrisy are we doing here?
Well, in what I've noticed recently in the media and with Democrat senators and representatives, from what they said in the early 2000s have changed. They've changed significantly. You have the Democrats saying no government shutdown should be used in this manner, right? And then here they are now. They're using it in the same manner which they denounced years ago.
Which, if you look at the articles saying, oh, that we're not looking to provide health care to illegal immigration, I beg you to go look back at the 2019 Democratic primary debate where the question was asked, would your bill include health care for illegal immigration or illegal migrants? And every single candidate raised their hands, so stating that they aren't for it is a blatant out lie because they've been pushing this same agenda since 2019. It hasn't changed at all. They're just trying to say it with a louder voice now.
And I believe the Democrats signed this same CR bill that the Republicans sent them 13 times under Joe Biden.
Well, the cool thing is I think America is actually starting to wake up to this bologna and cheese that they're starting to do. So from 2020 to 2024, across the country, Democrats saw a drop by 2.1 million registered voters, while the Republicans saw an increase of 2.4 million registered voters. So I think we're in the process of waking up because you see they're far left, they're catering to the far left ideology, which is widely unpopular across the country. It only supports a very, very small minority of people.
No, and I agree. And I just think it's disgusting what the Democrats are doing. It's disgusting that they're using government shutdown. They're affecting hundreds of thousands and millions of families across America, all to fund illegal immigration healthcare. And it's just it's very sick, and it's sad to see that what they said in the early 2000s, and they go back on it. When it fits their narrative. And shame on them. And during the first vote, every Democrat except for one Democrat voted against this, and it's very sick and disturbing.
It really truly is. It's a sad day that politics have become so volatile in this country that we're shuttering the government because of it. It kind of
Insane.
sounds like what they're against. The anti fascist movement. It sounds pretty fascist when you're like, oh, we're going to shut everything down if you don't vote our way.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree there. Going into our second topic we want to discuss today is a very controversial topic, and I think the problem when you start discussing this topic, and we're gonna get into it, there's two ways you think about it. You think, what is my morals, right? What do I believe in? What do I think's right? But what does my faith tell me? And
Well, so I've got a better one for you.
oh, here we go.
Here we go. We need to look at, I think we need to first to learn to lean on God as sovereign, even when government falters us. So the thing I want to address the moral question of using citizens and agencies. So, should they be using us as bargaining chips and in the public eye of opinion to pass their bill? And then we can really start looking into the morality of all topics, which is the primary topic we're about to talk about, which is the morality and ethics of human, personal morality and ethics, and then government morality and ethics towards the death penalty in this country.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very controversial topic, and there's two ways you can go with it. You can go with what you believe in mentally and morally, and then there's, you go to your faith, and what does the faith tell you? So this is going to be a very interesting topic, and just so everyone's aware, Josh is on his fourth coffee today.
Listen, the podcast is called Overcaffeinated and Dysfunctional. I am just both of us today, okay?
Well, it did take us 3 takes to record the intro, so
Listen, okay, we had some technical difficulties.
just saying.
So I would say, let's answer the first question before we move on. Is it moral and ethical for them to be using the public eye or the court of public opinion, so to speak, to pass these bills or attempt to pass these bills?
Oh, you mean the CR bill? Is that what we're still talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to keeping the government open, it's important. And here's the thing. They're in Congress, they're in the Senate to represent the people, their constituents. So why wouldn't you do what your constituents want? Most people do not agree with this government shutdown. It's just the people in Capitol Hill that they're pen pushers. They're pushing the pen, and all they're doing is pushing the pen for their left-wing ideological, platform. They're doing what their donors want them to do. Their donors say, push this. Guess what? They're going to push it so their bank account goes positive. If they don't push it, they lose out on donors. They lose out on the possibility of re-election. And then we go into the fact where should we limit these people? Limit their ability and how long they can serve as a senator or a congressman? Yes, we absolutely should. We absolutely should, because here we have, let's take for instance Chuck Schumer. He's been in there way too long. He has too much money in his bank account. Listen, he doesn't make enough money on salary to become a millionaire like he is. No way. He's bought and paid for. Every Democrat is bought and paid for. I don't care what they say.
Well, I think what you need to look at too is Nancy Pelosi. Out of all of them, if we're going to talk that route, you need to look at Nancy Pelosi, because out of all of them, there's no way. Now, I can tell you from the Federalist Papers, there was a reason why there were no term limits set, and there wasn't any term limits set on any branch up until FDR. FDR is the reason we have the 2 consecutive term limit. Prior to that, it was kind of just like a man's honor bowing out, mainly by our first president. George Washington had talked about it, why he wasn't going to go for a third. He didn't want to start the train of a monarchy. So he did 2 terms left, and then it was kind of just a gentleman's handshake, so to speak. I'm done after 2 terms. It was just the way they did it. Now, the Federalist Papers stated they didn't want term limits because after you got elected the first time, if you knew your term was up after this one, you were more likely just to sit in there and push what you wanted, not necessarily what the people wanted. I don't think they imagined, I bet they did, but they were hoping that the people would be good enough to understand that they actually need to be working on the behalf of the people. And that's just not what we see today. Now, going back to the original question of the morality and ethics of using the court of public opinion, I believe it has its time and place, but a government shutdown is not that time and place. Now, if you want to use the court of public opinion, great, that's fine. Sign the CR to extend the government out and then use the court of public opinion.
Right, and that's what Mike Johnson was saying on the news. He was saying this isn't the time or the place.
So, and then we can look at the overall ethics and morality, which poses a different question now. If we are questioning the ethics and morality of the federal government at this level, should we question the ethics and morality of the death penalty in this country? And we're going to talk about two different sides of that: the personal ethics and morality of the death penalty, as well as the government obligation of ethics and morality when it comes to the death penalty. Now, to clarify some things, there are some states in this country, and the federal government still has it too. There are some states with the death penalty as well. So the first question is, do you trust the current judicial system, David, with the ethic and morality obligation of the death penalty?
Well, I think the way it is now, you have to go through a trial, right? And a trial in front of your peers. I would say yes. I would say if we start to question our judicial system the way it is, you're going to spiral down a hole. You're going to spiral down a hole. This is the way it's been for hundreds and thousands of years. If we start to question the judicial system, that is the start of a fall of democracy. Now, yes, I agree. If a group of your peers determine that you were guilty in a crime, a heinous crime, we're not talking tax fraud. We're talking about maybe murder and first-degree murder.
Let's use the context because it's the most recent and hot topic case. The state of Utah versus the guy that shall not be named, Kirk's assassination.
Right. So in that case, we're not going to say his name because, these people, they commit these political crimes because they want to become the next big thing, right? The next big thing. Same thing with school shootings and church shootings. They're mentally ill in their head and they want to make a name for themselves. Now, let's look at the Kirk shooter. So this guy, young kid, gets up on top of a building with a 30-06 with the scope on it, gets in a nesting position about 200 yards away, and takes the life of a man. Not just a man, a father, a husband, a son, a nephew. Takes the life of this guy in front of 3,000 people. Not only 3,000 people, but his children and his wife. Okay? In this situation, if the jury finds him guilty, I 100% honestly believe, and on the death penalty, I'm kind of back and forth here, but I believe this crime should receive the death penalty. End of story. If he's found guilty, it deserves the death penalty. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, so I think if the trial is done right, so you have all the proper procedures involved, and that's going to be some of the determination there was the proper chain of custody upheld? Was everything followed to a T? Now, to remind people, we aren't talking like tax fraud, and I'm about to list this guy's charges so you can understand the weight that this carries, the burden it has to meet in order to have this. Guy's name shall not be said. Range of offenses including aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. These are some heavy offenses. Not, like we said, we're not just talking about tax fraud, but I believe we can trust the judicial process because of the built-in protections. Now, it's up to the government to show and prove that this person did it, because obviously it's innocent till proven guilty. You have to make it so there's without a shadow of a doubt this person committed that crime. Now, if for some reason chain of custody was not upheld, he wasn't read his Miranda rights, it could lead to a mistrial, which, stinks, wouldn't work out good. But I believe in that because there's no protection of preserving evidence. Somebody could have tampered with that evidence. As long as all the processes are upheld, they're able to prove it in court, and a jury of his peers say, yes, we believe he did it. And just to be clear, for you to get a conviction, it has to be unanimous consent in a jury format. If you have, I think it's 13 jurors, all 13 have to agree. If one person doesn't, then the charges are not admitted into the record. That's why sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days for these jury assemblies to come back into court and say whether the person's guilty or not guilty. I think as long as those processes are upheld, yeah, I would agree with whatever decision that comes out of the judiciary.
And just remember, this jury is not going to go to the room and say, he looks like the guy in the video. Yeah, I think he's guilty. No, they're not going to do that. They need to find, with no reasonable doubt, no reasonable suspicion that this guy committed the crime. DNA and video proof, it literally will link this guy to the crime. If they find that he's guilty and, he did this very heinous act, I believe the death penalty is definitely 100% should be used in this case.
Okay, so looking at the cases of how we've used the death penalty, there's a lot of ways they use the death penalty. You've got Utah still has public hangings, or at least hangings. I don't know if they're public anymore or not, but Utah has hangings. I don't know if they have the firing squad. I know South Carolina brought the firing squad back. You've got lethal injection and the electrical chair. What is the most, I guess, moral and ethical way about enforcing the death penalty? In my opinion, I would say firing squad.
This is where I'm kind of lost here, because firing squad could work, right? It could work. But what if none of them actually hit a vital organ and now the guy's suffering in the chair?
Well, you have 3 people firing at him. If you don't hit, you've got some bad shots there.
I would not be surprised. I've seen worse. In my own opinion, and again, it's my opinion, right? I think they should go out by lethal injection. It's the most painless. It's the quickest. You don't agree?
No, there's a lot of reports of it failing because you have to have such a precise mixture. And if you fail at it, it becomes a very, very painful process where the person could take days to die.
Does he turn into a zombie?
No, he sits there in agony.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, listen.
And fun fact for you, by the way, lethal injection is done by a paramedic. Do you know why?
Why?
Because nurses and doctors took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. They can't technically do a lethal injection, but a paramedic or an EMT has not done that same Hippocratic oath.
Okay, here's my opinion. You want to hear my opinion? Here's my opinion.
Dysfunctional facts, Josh.
Listen. If you're on death penalty, let's just let these guys decide which way they want to go out. Whether lethal injection, firing squad, electric. I feel like electric chair is the most inhumane. Let the person decide what they want. For me, personally, if I had a choice, if I was on death row and I had to make a decision on which one I wanted, what a hard decision. I don't know what I would choose.
I'm taking...
Yeah, but just the thought of being shot, like the intent.
You ain't going to know when you get shot.
Yeah, but
it's going to be all over.
Yeah, but it's going to be like, the 30 seconds
you might look like
that.
You might look like Swiss cheese afterwards, but you don't care.
I honestly don't know which one I would choose. I feel like maybe lethal injection I would go for. I mean, it's probably the most painless, I think. I don't know. How about this? I would choose lethal injection, and if it fails, put a bullet in my head. That's what I would choose. What do you think? Does that work? Is that a choice?
I don't know if that's a choice. We can look into that one though.
Now, can you tie a cinder block around my leg and just drop me in the ocean? Like, is that an option?
Oh, drowning? That seems worse. I'd almost go for lethal injection over drowning.
Can you pick me up in a helicopter and drop me into a volcano? Like, is that an option?
You know what you should do? You should do like the other guys. Remember when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson jumped off the building, aimed for the bushes?
Oh, my God. Oh, shit. So now here's my question for you, Josh.
Okay.
Getting a little back on track here. When it comes to your moral thoughts, what you believe in, do you believe morally that the death penalty is a humane punishment? And what I mean by that is, morally, do you agree with the death penalty? Now, I know that we're going to break this up in 2 ways. We're going to break this up on morally what you believe in, and then what your faith tells you to believe in. So let's go with first. We'll both answer this side first. Morally, what do you believe in the death penalty? Do you agree with it or do you not agree with it?
On the flesh side, if I listen to the flesh of me, I agree 100% with the death penalty for heinous crimes. Again, it has to meet a certain burden. Aggravated murder, first-degree murder, which is premeditated. You knew you were going to do it. You planned it out. Yes, I agree. I believe the judicial system still has to uphold what our founding principles tell us. The right to a speedy trial, the right to a lawyer, the right to face your accuser, the right to have a jury of your peers. Also following the standards of chain of evidence, chain of custody. If all of those match out, and the jury comes back and says you committed that crime unequivocally, then yeah, I believe 100% in the death penalty. What would be your thought on that morally and ethically?
Well, I think it should go based off the crime. Obviously, the death penalty, you're not going to give someone for tax fraud, right? We agree with that. Somebody who puts a victim through torturous pain and grief, like murder, torture,
Serial essay.
serial, yeah. Yes, I believe on the human side of things, eye for an eye, right? I know two wrongs don't make a right, but in this situation, the trauma that the victim has felt and experienced throughout the process, with the crime, the process of trial, it would be more negative than what the victims. It'd be more. They would deal with more trauma than what the person committing the crime would feel in that sense. Yeah, I think this is a very difficult topic, but I think in some circumstances, yes, it is needed, and we should use it. When you go to your faith side of things, what do you think your faith tells you? Now, well, I'll let you answer the question first. Go ahead. What do you think, based off faith, is right or wrong?
On the faith side, I don't believe I should be making the choice, and I don't believe in it on that side of faith, of moral and ethically being faith based. There's a few reasons for it, and I'm going to use some biblical verses to back my side up on this one. 1 Peter 3:9. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that way you may inherit a blessing. Another one, 1 Thessalonians 5:5. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always strive to do what is good for each other and for everyone else. And one more, 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice, strive for full restoration, courage one another, be of one mind, live in peace, and the love of God of love and peace will be with you. And then there's another example of this currently acting out as you and I are talking. The Michigan shooter at the Mormon church. Did you see what they did? The congregation came together instead of repaying evil with evil, and they did exactly what the Bible tells them, and I very much applaud them for it. They raised $225,000 for the parents of the person that actually burned down that church and shot the church up. If that isn't God moving in a community, if that doesn't bring, a flutter of emotion to you, I don't know what will, because how else is a community? What we got to think of, and this is why the Bible says it and God talks about it, we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. So when you go and talk to your brother, would you ever wish death on your brother? Would you ever wish death on your sister? So why are you going to do it in the godly kingdom? Leave the vengeance side to God. God is the Father. What does the Father do in the family? And we had talked about this in a previous episode. The father in the family is the disciplinarian. When we were kids, if your brother messed up or your sister messed up, were you the one to punish them? Most likely not. It was either the mother or the father that would punish and deal with the punishment. That's where I stand. Faith-based is let God worry about the vengeance, and we share the blessing, turn the other cheek, and be there as a community for that person. Have the compassion for the person still. It's a hard fight, and you and I have talked about this. I struggle with that part of it, especially with this big case coming up. The flesh side of me wants the death penalty. The other side of me is, well, turn the other cheek. I don't think we should repay death with death.
Now, let me ask you this question. John 8:7 says, when confronted with a woman accused of adultery, the crowd demanded she be stoned. Jesus responded by telling the crowd, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. End quote. Passage is sometimes interpreted as a critique of those who would carry out the penalty without having the moral authority to do so, rather than the abolition of capital punishment itself. Do you think, based off John, do you think that is giving the authority to carry out that killing? Right, because the death penalty is killing. It's a killing. Do you
Yes,
think...
it is giving the authority, but read the context again. Let you, the first without sin, to cast the first stone. Which one of us in this world is without sin? We are a world of sinners. We are only saved by God's grace and love. If we had to earn it, man, none of us would be going to heaven. Let's be honest. None of us would.
No, and I agree. And, I think
that's why it goes back to let him. God and Jesus are the only ones without sin. Let them cast the stones.
Yeah, no, you are right. And I think we both kind of parallel the same on this opinion. And that's why it's a very hard topic to discuss, because that your human self is like, absolutely, he deserves it. And then you go, well, wait, what does God say about that? and Ten Commandments. What does the Ten Commandments say? Exodus 20, right? Verses 12 and 13. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving to you. You shall not murder. The death penalty, whether you believe it or not, is murder. You're killing somebody. Thou shalt not kill. You're killing.
Yeah, it's the flesh world of illegal murder. And go back to that first one. You should honor thy mother and thy father. Aren't we honoring thy father if we're all brothers and sisters in Christ and God is the Father? Aren't we honoring our Father by listening to his words? I mean, the Bible, there's an acronym out there. It's called Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. Isn't the Bible telling us what route to take in honoring him? In a sense, by advocating for the death penalty and executing the death penalty, we are dishonoring the Father.
Yeah, I do agree. This is why it becomes a very hard topic to discuss. Because when you look at it on a human and level, a moral level, right? What we would believe in, you think of, well, this guy committed a very heinous crime, right? He killed somebody, eye for an eye. Then you're like, what if we don't put him to death? What do we do then? Life in prison, no possibility of parole, living. I mean, this guy is in his 20s. He lives to 70, 60. We'll say 60, right? He lives 50 years in prison. Guess who's paying for that? The taxpayers.
To be fair, though, we're already paying for a bunch anyways.
But that's what I go back to saying. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth it?
I think if we're including faith on it, there is no amount of money that would deter me from doing the right thing under God.
No, I agree. But in a country we live in, where we're $37 trillion in debt, there's currently 2,100 inmates in America on death row. How much money do you think it takes per year just for those 2,100 death row inmates to house, feed, clothe, etc., and all these programs that they're going through too? How much per year do you think it costs? We're $37 trillion in debt.
Beside the faith, I'm listening to the flesh side of me and not necessarily the Holy Spirit. The first question I'm going to ask is, why do we have 2,100 inmates on death row still? One should be questioning why. Why are they still? Now, if they have a case in appeal, that's fine. That's a different question. I believe you have the right to appeal your case. There should be a time limit on that appeal. Once you've been convicted, because let's get terms right here, an indictment is not a conviction. A conviction comes after an indictment and a jury decided that you were guilty. An indictment is just saying we're bringing these charges against you.
No, and I agree. And again, here let's move on to another topic. Let's move on to the reform of the death penalty or the judicial system. It's taking years to get a retrial. Having 2,100 people on death row, there should be something in there that says if you're not going to appeal your case, right? Why are we waiting years to put these people to death? Shouldn't we put a limit on that? From 60 days from this sentencing, you were to be put to death by, A, B, C, D, E within 60 days. Why is there 2,100 people on death row? We know that 2,100 of them aren't awaiting a retrial. Not all of them are,
I'm going to tie the moral and ethical question back into this. Do we think it's ethically wrong to be sitting there and just letting these people think about it and wait for death to come?
Yeah.
I've got some good ones. I can come up with them.
And when it comes to the moral side of me, I think the crime you committed is worse. Do you think, again, we're not going to say his name, Charlie Kirk's assassinator, do you think him sitting there and thinking about the possibility of death is greater damage and trauma than what his two children witnessed? Do you think that's greater trauma, personal damage than what his wife damaged? I mean, his children and his wife witnessed their father and mother brutally shot in the biggest artery in your body, in your neck, violently assassinated, dragged off of a stage in front of 3,000 college students to be pronounced dead. Now, a mother does not have her husband. These children do not have their father. And there's no way to reverse that. Do you think the trauma that they feel would be greater or less than what this guy sitting in jail right now thinking about the possibility of death? Do you think it's greater?
No. And the reason I say no is because, one, I want to applaud Erica Kirk for coming out and forgiving. God talks about forgiveness, and unforgiveness can destroy your life. I majorly applaud her. That's a hard step to cross. Now, as far as the kids, I say no because what you got to think about is these kids are under 5. I believe they're 3 and 1. The youngest, the 1-year-old son, is going to have absolutely no memory of his father.
Nothing.
And the father's supposed to be that person. The father is the leader of the family. Now, you're going to have a kid grow up without his father. without those simple teachings that he could have passed off to him. And then you look at, and this is widely known, daughters attract to their fathers, not in that weird incestual way. Obviously, that's not what I'm talking about. But you've always heard of that's daddy's little girl. That's the person that walks them down the aisle. When she becomes of age, she's not going to have her father there to walk her down the aisle.
And let's look at why, daughters naturally gravitate to the father, because their father teaches them the value which they hold and how they should be treated by their future husband. They teach them, daddy's little princess. You're to be held with pride. You're to be held with dignity. You're to be held with caution. You're a very fragile person. You deserve the same respect. And they teach their daughter, inadvertently, without even saying it, they teach the daughter how they should be valued by their future husband.
They teach them conviction.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't think whatever you do in this situation is never going to relieve the burden in the flesh, is never going to relieve the burden of what taking the father away did. The only thing that can help it is turning towards God, looking to him for every answer, inviting him in every day. But you're still going to be missing that piece. God will be there to be your comforter, your healer, your counselor, all of that. I don't believe flesh-wise, though. Nothing you do, say, do, will add up to the equivalency of what they're going to feel.
And I do want to add that this isn't a short-term failure. This isn't a short-time failing either. I mean, the 1-year-old isn't going to have any memory of their father. None.
And the 3-year-old might not either.
I doubt even that, because going back, thinking how far back I can remember, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I can't remember that far back. I think I was like 2 or 3 living in Jacksonville, Florida with my parents. I don't remember any of that. Don't remember any of that. And it's very sad. It's a tragedy. I'm going to say it here and to our platform and our viewers, 100% denounce political violence. 150% denounce political violence. No one's opinion, nobody's opinion, is worth causing deathly violence against them. It's uncalled for. It's not needed, and it just needs to come to an end. Same thing with violence against schools and violence against churches. It needs to end, and it needs to end now.
No, I 100% agree. The day we turn from talking and just turn to violence because someone doesn't agree with you is the day we see a cease to our republic or a constitutional republic. And let me remind our viewers, I'm going to read this out because I think it really frames everything in the right way. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. In a democracy, the majority rules. If the majority decided they wanted your bike, they could take it. In a republic, your bike is your property. You do not owe it to anyone. It cannot be taken against your will by law. America is a constitutional republic. Therefore, the Constitution is the law by which we are supposed to be protected. In a republic, the individual is protected from the majority by the constitutional law. And then something else. This is George Washington that I'm quoting. If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. That's true in every way. If we start trying to silence people and people actually start to stop talking, we're just going to be sheep. We're just going to be led away to wherever wherever the majority wants us to go. And that's the threat of democracy over the constitutional republic in which we were formed.
No, I agree. And Charlie Kirk also said it, and I'll quote him here. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, end quote. And I gotta say, he said it better than anyone else. When people stop talking, violence happens, divorce happens, and we're seeing the effects of that right now. In every day, we're seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, I would say, as an overall wrap up of this episode, 1, let's just pray for our country and the world at whole. Pray that our leaders come to sense and reason and end this federal shutdown. Then pray for the families out there facing violence that have seen violence in their lives. And then just pray for Jesus to touch everybody's heart. How would you want to close it out, David?
Yeah, I mean, you said it better than I could probably say it. I mean, if you denounce the government shutdown, contact your senators, call them, flood their offices with texts, calls, show up there, go there, emails, letters, whatever you need to do. Like I already said it, we need to denounce political violence and all types of violence towards schools, churches. It's unnecessary. It's unresponsible. And I never thought in a million years we would see this as much as we do now.
No, I agree. Civic engagement is how we get this stuff to stop. Show your disgust for it to your senators. You have two for each state. And then find out which representative reps your district and reach out to them and tell them to end the shutdown. And with that, I want to. What's that?
And I was just saying, absolutely.
And with that, I would like to say thank you for listening to our podcast today. You can find all of our social media links in the link tree description down below. Don't forget to leave a like, turn that notification button on, and give us a subscriber follow. Anything from you?
That's it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, put a comment down in the comments, any future topics, any comments what you thought on this video or any other episode. And thanks for tuning in. Here we go.
Thank you guys.